Well, this is a chapel that I always look forward to. We do it once a semester. We have students give their witness. And a witness is, it's rather like, we know faith is a journey. And it's never as important to God where we are on the journey as that we're on the journey. And so we find ourselves at many places along the road. And when we give a witness and when someone testifies to their faith, they're just giving you a dispatch from where they are right now. And I've been at this thing for many, many years. And I still, when I give witness, I can say all kinds of correct things, but I'm still someone who's on the road. And this morning, we're going to hear from Aaron Lavore and Katie Fedor as they give you their dispatch from where they are on the road. There's just something, a quote that I love from G. Campbell Morgan. You may not have ever heard of this man, but he's someone you ought to get acquainted with. Was a great preacher of about 60 years ago, a man of tremendous intellect. And he said this about faith. He said, "Faith is the answer to a question, and therefore it is out of work when there's no question to ask." Faith is the answer to a question, and therefore it is out of work when there is no question to ask. Who asks the questions? Well, we think we do, and we do. But you know, God asks the questions too. In fact, sometimes the questions He puts to us in our journey are what make us ask more questions. So we're going to hear from Aaron first, then we'll sing a song, and then Katie will come on up. So, Aaron, we're eager to hear your dispatch from your place on the journey.
Wow, Ben definitely read my draft that I sent him because this is about questions. All right. Growing up, I spent a lot of time thinking, and my family definitely noticed. My mom would see me sitting, staring off into the distance, and she'd ask worriedly, "Aaron, are you thinking again? Go do something, please. Go watch TV." I share this with you to illustrate that I'm a person who always has a lot of different thoughts swirling around in my mind at any given moment. Not to say that I'm extremely smart or super intellectual, I'm just wired to constantly question and analyze the things going on around me. Thoughtfulness is one of my strengths, but it can also be debilitating when my thoughts and questions paralyze me to inaction. During my junior year, I was paralyzed by my questions about Christianity. That year, I studied abroad in Querétaro, Mexico, with the Westmont in Mexico program. And for the first time, I was living far away from my family, my home, and my church. Lucky for me, I became great friends with my host family. I could not have asked for more loving people to live with. As I became a part of their family, I learned that their religious beliefs were very different from my own. My host siblings are very spiritual and hold beliefs from a variety of religions. I remember chatting with my host sister, Paulina, and hearing her unique ideas about spirituality and the sentient force that governs the universe. And when she asked me why I believed in Christianity, I surprisingly found myself struggling to answer her question, partially because A, I was trying to speak in Spanish, and B, I really just didn't know what to say. I started to say, "I know in my heart that," but then I stopped. And I continued to say, "Because I pray to God and He listens," and again I stopped. I wasn't even convincing myself that I had good reasons for belief. And that moment unlocked a torrential downpour of questions about God and my faith. The questions were disorienting and uncomfortable, but once the flood started, I could not stop it. I entered a season of questioning that invaded every aspect of my life. I stopped praying, and I stopped reading the Bible. Classic moves. There were so many questions in my mind that I didn't know which to tackle first. I would start with one relatively straightforward question, like, do I believe in the power of prayer? But that would trigger a series of questions like, what is prayer? How does it work? Does it really change God's mind about the future? Can God even change His mind? Is it prideful of me to think that I can change God's mind? The questions would go on, and I could never answer a single one. Through this process, I realized something about myself. I really, really like to know answers. I like black and white solutions. I like things that are testable and to know if I'm right or wrong. But sadly, and maybe fortunately for my pride, life is rarely that way. How do you prove or measure love, for instance? You really can't. You can look at brain chemistry and hormones and the evolutionary function of love, but you still can't prove that the feeling exists or that it's important. So I came back from Mexico with a Facebook full of photos and a suitcase stuffed with souvenirs, but a mind and a heart devoid of certainty. My foundation for faith was completely shaken. This affected my relationships and my happiness to the point where I couldn't interact well with people. So I tried a new tactic. I set my questions aside and I tried to live without faith in anything. Quite honestly, it was liberating for a while. But I soon found that life for me no longer held any meaning beyond myself. And because there was no meaning outside of myself, I just felt purposeless. I knew that I couldn't continue to live this way. There just wasn't enough to it. I desperately missed the familiarity and safety of the faith of my childhood, but at this point, I still couldn't justify re-entering the faith. I still didn't understand enough. But then I realized that I would never understand enough. There's a quote by Dr. Beebe's favorite person, Pascal, that sums up the insight I had reached. He says, "In faith, there is enough light for those who want to believe, and enough shadows to blind those who don't." At this point, I knew I had sufficient reason to either reject or accept faith, and that I could no longer remain immobile. I needed to move. So I chose to take a step of faith toward the God and the faith I grew up with, and I began that journey with prayer. All the same questions remained, but this time I was willing to view prayer like I'd come to view love, knowing that it was good without knowing why. Prayer was and is the action of faith that has comforted me most, although I don't have an explanation for why this is. All I know is that I pray because I have to and because I want to. So where does that leave me now? Well, every day I'm learning more about myself. One thing I've learned from this process is that I tend to elevate reason and answers to a place higher than they should be in my life. They are the idols that I cling to when life is uncertain. I'm trying to learn little by little to be okay with the mysteries of life and faith, because mystery doesn't mean that there are no answers, just that I don't know the answers yet. And for those of you who can resonate at all with my experience, I want to encourage you, but I don't want to be dogmatic. I'm not going to say questioning is a natural part of the process of owning one's faith, or even, look at me. I went through a period of testing and decided to turn to God, and now I'm stronger in my faith as a result. That would be an unfair, romantic depiction of my story. My journey hasn't been tidy, and it isn't over. I still don't know where I stand on a lot of theological questions. More often than not, I'm frustrated with how little I understand faith. And sometimes the things I hear in church honestly don't sound that appealing. But I do have to say this. Throughout the process, I've never been ashamed to ask questions because I believe that God can handle every single one that I throw at him. As I seek truth, God reassures me that he is waiting at the end of it all. Thanks.
Let's stand together.
Now I can see you guys. So the summer after my junior year of high school, I went on a beach vacation with one of my best friends and her whole family for an entire week. It was great. We spent hours in the ocean every day, swimming and boogie boarding and just like playing in the waves. We spent hours on the beach every day playing volleyball. We walked up and down the one street that composed the entire beach town literally hundreds of times. But what stands out most in my mind is my brief encounter with a little girl named Jordan. Jordan and her mom met my friend and I on the pier one day. And Jordan was so cute. She was hiding behind her mom and like peeking out at us adorably. And her mom came up and asked if I had alopecia. And I was startled. I smiled and I said, yes, I do. And I told her how surprised I was that someone knew what alopecia was, because most people assume my hair loss is due to either chemotherapy or like a truly rebellious spirit. Her mom explained that Jordan also has alopecia and was really curious about me. And as I looked more closely at Jordan, I realized what only one baldy can tell about another. The cap that she was wearing was carefully chosen and placed to hide her bald head. I'm not going to be cliche and say that I saw myself in Jordan, but I totally saw myself in Jordan, and not just because we're both bald. Everybody who knows me now and didn't know me back then, like, argues with me when I tell them that I was an incredibly shy child. They just can't believe that my parents had to order food for me at restaurants until I was in high school, or that I like wouldn't talk to anyone, especially adults, unless I was incredibly familiar with them. They don't believe that I was a hider. I guess I just didn't realize that just because I was behind my mom's legs didn't mean I was suddenly invisible. I just wanted to fly under the radar and go unnoticed. 1 year before I met Jordan, I was Jordan. I was a hider. I just wasn't as little and definitely wasn't as cute. In 8th grade, when my parents and I first noticed that my hair was falling out at an alarming rate, I hid my bald spots by brushing my hair in a certain way and stopped putting my hair up in that ponytail that I used every single day. I was diagnosed with alopecia, an autoimmune disorder that makes your hair fall out. And when my various treatments failed, I stepped up my hiding techniques by getting a hairpiece that clipped into the hair I had left. But in a sick twist of events, the clipping into the hair pulled out that hair, so then I had to step up my hiding techniques again, and I got a full-fledged wig. I was practically Hannah Montana. My wig gave me confidence to go out in public without revealing my true identity as the bald girl. Except it wasn't my true identity that I was trying to protect. It was my superstar identity. It wasn't because I loved the reality of my life and didn't want to jeopardize it. It was because I didn't want to acknowledge the reality of my life. That I felt alone because none of my friends or family could empathize with what I was going through. That while everybody else was dealing with a transition to high school and talking about boys, I was starting to look more like my grandpa than my classmates. That I was not okay with the cards I had been dealt. That my optimistic smile was faltering. That I was too proud to admit that I felt ugly and self-conscious. That I cared what people thought about me. Then I went on a mission trip to Mexico with my high school youth group the summer after my sophomore year to build a house. I left my wig at home, mixing cement and stuccoing and just like sweating all the time, and solar showers, not an equation that points to bring a wig. A lot of the people on the trip had no idea that I was bald, but I was met with incredible love. My team showed me how fun it was to be the bald girl. They asked if they could rub lotion on my head, and they helped me fix my bandana in the right spot every day to solidify the most epic tan I will ever have in my whole life. And the theme of the week was The Motions, which is a song by Matthew West that talks about living life with passion and going all out and not just going through the motions. The theme verse was John 10:10, which says that the thief comes to kill and steal and destroy, but Jesus Christ comes that we might have a life, and life abundantly, or life to the full, depending on which translation you want to use. And I looked at the life that I was living, and I told myself, Katie, Jesus did not die to bring you this life. He didn't die to bring you a life that's timid and full of fear and full of hiding. He died to bring you life to the fullest. So I stopped wearing my wig, and I stepped more fully into the shining person that you see standing before you today. I am so much more myself now than I ever was with hair. And I've become bold in every aspect of my life. No longer do I try to fly under the radar and refuse to talk to people that I don't know. No longer am I afraid to express myself or dance around in public. It has been incredible to realize that what at the time I would have said was the worst thing that ever happened to me, God has turned into the best thing he's ever done for me. My favorite Bible verse is Proverbs 19:21. It says, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." My struggle with accepting alopecia has made me so thankful that I'm not writing my own story, that the pen is in the hand of someone who has a much better vantage point of what is best for me. And I cling to the knowledge that God is faithful and working all things for my good. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes just 10 days before moving to Westmont for my freshman year. And it is something that has driven me to my knees on multiple occasions. I hate it. I hate that spontaneous physical activity makes me nervous because I haven't been able to plan out my insulin dosages and match it with my carb intake. And I hate that my mood can be so dependent on my blood sugar, and if it's really high, I can turn into a total jerk. I hate that I have to decide where to hook my insulin pump when I wear a dress because I don't have a waistband. But what I really hate is how guilty and ashamed I feel when I know I've made decisions that bring immediate satisfaction, but are really detrimental to my health in the long term. I cry a lot. I know that I'm being selfish by not taking care of myself, and being selfish by thinking about what I want instead of all the people that care about me and would be hurt if I were to hurt myself. I'm being stupid in valuing curly fries over my health. But I know at the core of my being that there is good to come from diabetes. Because God is faithful. Because God is able to use our struggles to build each other up. Because as embarrassing as it might be to stand up here and tell you all that I have a terrible diet and I can't get control over my eating and I cry all the time and I really honestly struggle with something that I wonder if I'll ever get control of, it's important. It's important to share stories not just of the triumphs that we've had, but of the things that continue to haunt us. It's important because at one time, I was embarrassed to tell even my closest friends about the hurt I was hiding under my wig. But now I can see how God has used it for incredible good in my life and the lives of others. Remember Jordan? In a town as small as this one, it's not surprising that I saw her again. And this time she was with her whole family, and they all knew who I was. Her dad greeted me by name, even though I'd never met him, and I was like, you've talked about me. And Jordan came running up to me with this huge smile on her face and goes, "Look, Katie, I'm not wearing a hat today either." Yeah, that's your awe moment, guys. This is from the girl who 2 days before this had hid behind her mom and her hat. And if that isn't evidence that sharing your hurt with someone and allowing them to see the places where you've been wounded can really make a difference, I don't know what is. Because I also saw myself in Jordan that second day. And it was a me who has grown so much and is living so much more fully in the life God desires for me. I joke about being bald because I'm completely okay with it. I've leaned into it, embraced it, and I love having the bald girl as part of my identity. But I joke about diabetes because I'm not okay with it at all. I'm still waiting to see what good God is going to bring out of this. And as much as I wish I could stand up here and tell you this 100% triumphant stories where I punch diabetes in the face and I'm like, you have no control over my life, that's just not real. It's just not where I am. And what I wanted to share with you today is where I really am. That reality is messy. We're all works in progress. And just because you haven't seen the fruit in your suffering does not mean that God isn't using it for good. Waiting is awful, and I'm not about to sugarcoat that. But let's be honest about our hurt while we wait, and let's wait together.
Thank you, Aaron and Katie. Thank you, worship team. Thank you, Lord. And Lord, bless us and keep us. Make your face shine upon us and be gracious to us. Lord, turn your face toward us. We need you. Smile on us and give us your peace today and forever. Amen.